Okay, welcome back. Thank you for the 5-minute delay on the start time. Appreciate that. Needed a drink of water just to give my voice a quick break. And now we're jumping right back into it. This session is called Articulation Check-In 2.0. I am pleased to welcome my colleague, Dr. Fiona McQuarrie, who's our Special Projects Officer. She's going to be a familiar face over the course of the day. We have done this session a couple of times in the past, and we have found that it has actually been quite a well-received presentation. And so we decided to bring back one of the golden oldies, and we are going to jump right in. This is your opportunity to check in with regards to articulation at your institution. So I'm going to turn over just this first slide to introduce to Fiona. Fiona has been recently going through our archives. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here on the screen?
Okay, so one of the projects I've been working on this year at BCCAT is sorting out the paper files, which go back in some cases decades, for the articulation committees. And I came across this memo. It's from more than 30 years ago. It's from Grant Fisher, who was one of the first executive directors at BCCAT. And the memo is about articulation committee representatives asking who pays travel costs to go to articulation committee meetings. And we laughed quite hard when we found this piece of paper because some questions about articulation and articulation committees are new and some are persistent. So we thought this was a good note to start off the session with, to show that there are always questions and also that we are always trying to answer them.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it's true. The more things change, I think we get asked this question probably more than any other question
Yep.
whenever we attend articulation activities. So it was kind of funny to see this memorialized in paper when we were going through our archives over the last few months. So just in terms of the intended audience for this particular session, this session is particularly geared towards articulation committee chairs, as well as system liaison persons, as well as articulation committee representatives. This is also geared towards subject matter experts or course evaluators. If you are a recently branded and badged strategic articulation manager, hopefully you'll find this session of value. And this is also for people that work with subject matter experts. So maybe you're not a SAM, but you are somebody who works closely with faculty or evaluators. This session is going to highlight some of the things that you might want to learn or know about what has happened in the previous year in terms of articulation, just beyond the TCS as well as the BC Transfer Guide. So this is our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about articulation and transfer credit activity. We're going to talk about some of the resources that are available to committees as well as transfer credit staff. We're going to talk a little bit about what we learned last year from attending articulation committees, including about roles and responsibilities. But mostly what we want to do is check in with you. This is where we want to hear about what you want to tell BCCAT. Tell us about what's going on in your world. Tell us what you want to know. Bring your questions because this is the opportunity to do that. You've got the chat as well as the Q&A. You did a bang-up job in the last session, so we hope to see that continue as well throughout this session. So just to jump into articulation activity, I'm going to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts. I generally do get into the weeds. And in terms of the BC Transfer Guide, we currently are sitting at 373,000 course-to-course agreements, which is obviously the most in our history. 288,000 of those equivalencies are from BC Transfer System members. It's always fun to see how many different acronyms we can pile on into a different slide. BCTS stands for BC Transfer System. We also have 85,000 external equivalencies, and that is any equivalency that is from outside of British Columbia, whether it's from across Canada or from outside of Canada or around the world. That represents 127,000 unique courses. So if you ever want to know how big the transfer guide, these are the high-level numbers that tell you what is contained within the transfer guide. We are also pleased to welcome a new member institution this year. It's been quite a few years since we've added a new member. Western Community College started articulating last spring as a member institution. They offer a Bachelor of Hospitality Management, and if you want to send out courses for articulation to Western Community College, you would now have that ability through the transfer credit system. Now, in terms of transfer credit activity, I do maintain articulation activity, and we saw a very large volume of articulation requests this year. I mentioned in the previous session that we had 18,000 pending articulation requests at one point last spring. This led to a minor freakout on my behalf. I did reach out to a number of institutions to try to assist in reducing the number of articulation requests. I think that really what it was there was a lot of institutions that were sending requests out to everyone rather than being more strategic in their approach. That was actually where I got the idea for the previous session. I'm very pleased to say that the current number of pending articulation requests is around 5,100. This is a generally normal state of affairs, and I'm happy to see that. So please, if you are involved in articulation, thank you for all the work that you've done. Just know that when BCCAT reaches out to contact you, we're not trying to name and shame. Our goal is really to assist to make sure that your articulation activities remain manageable and sustainable. And just as a reminder, the golden rule, articulation requests should always be based on actual student mobility. And there was a request in the previous session, or a question in the previous session about where can you find out about student mobility data. So I mentioned at that time, you can look at the Student Transitions Project as well as the CDW. If you just Google those terms, you'll be able to find them. And we will have a couple of sessions tomorrow that highlight some of the different student mobility research that is going on within our sector. Just as a reminder, when it comes to transfer tips, we have developed the how to articulate. When I say we, that's being a bit generous. Fiona did the bulk of the work on the how to articulate. So I want to give credit where credit is. It's the royal we, when I really actually mean you, Fiona. She put together an update to the how to articulate handbook, and you can find that on the BCCAT website. This is your key to the nuts and bolts of articulation. If you ever want to find out how to send out a course, what to do, whether what are some of the best, the recommended practices, this is your resource to take a look at. Just remember that when you send out a course for articulation, one course can create up to 40 articulation requests through the push of literally a button. And so if you have 10 courses, you can create 400 requests very, very quickly. And so even though we are at 5,100 articulation requests, you can see how this can grow quite exponentially very quickly. And so we do ask you to make sure that when you submit courses for articulation, that it's based on actual or expected student mobility. And I do understand that sometimes you've got brand new courses that have never been taken before, so you don't know for sure how many people are going to transfer. But try to make as informed decision as you can. We went over some of the features that you can use to regularly forward and close requests. And as a reminder, only submit upper level courses for articulation, for upper level articulation, if the institution has a policy to accept upper level credit. There are a number of schools that, for a variety of reasons, do not articulate upper level courses. We also know that the number of students that transfer with upper level courses is much, much lower than those who transfer from the first and second year. So when in doubt, refer to the How to Articulate guide. The link is now in the chat. And if you have any questions that's not covered in that guide, always reach out. We're happy to help out. Now, in terms of overall tech updates, I'm going to talk tomorrow a lot more about technology. This year, resources were largely focused on the TCS Pathways project. If you're wondering what that is, I would suggest you tune in around 2:15 today, because Jennifer Cook is going to be here to give us a presentation and overview on what's going on with TCS Pathways. So that's a teaser for later this afternoon. But we've also been working in collaboration with our provincial partners to onboard to BC Technologies. So we've always had a standing offer to our provincial partners across the country that if you want to adopt or adapt BCCAT technologies for use in your jurisdiction, we want to collaborate with you. And we've been working with some of our provincial partners to onboard them to BC Technology. We hope to make an announcement about that in due time. But that's been a big part of our work this year. And we are also now building a plan for the modernization of our technology. And we want to hear from you about some of your ideas when it comes to modernization. So I'll be giving a session. This is another shameless plug for tomorrow. I will be giving a session around 11 a.m. tomorrow on the modernization initiative and some of the ideas that we're kicking around. We've been getting a number of inquiries over the course of the last year about, well, can we use AI for our evaluations? Are there different ways that we can connect different resources? And I have some thoughts and I have some ideas, and I'm looking forward to sharing them with you tomorrow at 11 a.m. So you'll want to tune in for that, whether it's streaming or in person. I am now going to pass the virtual baton over to Fiona, who's going to give us an update on some resources and talk a little bit more about what we learned last year. So over to you, Fiona.
Okay, so in addition to the How to Articulate guide, which Mike has just reviewed, we also have the Articulation Committee guide. And this too was updated last year. And this has all sorts of valuable information about how to run articulation committee meetings, how to keep representatives engaged throughout the year, because the work of articulation goes on throughout the entire year. It's not just at the annual meeting. So that's a very valuable resource as well. BCCAT also maintains a Moodle host for committees. So any committee that wants to have a Moodle site to hold its documents or to host discussions or to post information about meetings, that's available as well. We also have templates to help committees run their meetings. We have templates for taking minutes at meetings. We have templates for signing in for attendance, and we also have a template for institutional reports for each institution to provide information on what's been happening in their program that year. We also offer orientation sessions for new chairs and SLPs that will walk you through the process of administering a committee throughout the year, and also through the duties that the various roles on the committees have. Something we started doing in the last couple of years too, particularly to help committees where there's a change in committee leadership, is we are maintaining a list of institutions that should be represented on each committee. So any BC Transfer System member institution that offers a course or program in the relevant subject area to the committee is permitted to have a representative on that committee. And sometimes that knowledge gets lost when leadership changes over on committees. So that list is available. Contact us if you're a new chair or an SLP and you want to know which institution should be attending your committee's meetings. And finally, staff. There's myself, there's Mike, there's Annabella Chun. We're more than happy to help. We're here to support the committees, and we want to help make the committees be as productive as possible. Mike, could you switch to the next slide? Thank you. So every year, we at BCCAT do our best to send staff representatives to articulation committee meetings. This year, we were able to attend more than 50 meetings. To put that in context, there's more than 60 articulation committee meetings, so we were able to attend most of them, which was great. Most meetings this year were in person with an online option. Some committees are now choosing to meet entirely in person, but the majority of committees met in person and set up some means by which representatives could attend virtually. Many committees are finding challenges with finding someone to chair the committee or to host the committee. This is something that we can try to help with in locating a chair or finding an institution that's willing to host. There's also been concerns about some institutions not sending representatives, and this concern seems particularly acute when the institution that is not sending a representative is an institution that many students want to transfer to. It makes it a bit of a challenge for the sending institutions if there's not a representative from that receiving institution to speak. Next slide, please, Mike. And what did we hear at the meetings? There was a lot of discussion about the new limits on the number of international student visas and the impact that that will have on enrollments. A lot of discussion about AI and ChatGPT, how to incorporate it into teaching and course delivery in an effective way, and also a lot of discussion about it being misused by students for writing essays with their names on them and that kind of thing. A lot of discussion about student well-being.
Oh, looks like Fiona might have gotten a bit of a stall out there. We are going to see if we can get Fiona back. Fiona, are you there? Oh, running into a bit of lag, so that's okay.
Okay,
You
I
back?
think it's back now.
Okay, we were,
Okay.
go ahead, please.
Faculty workloads and attrition, especially when full-time permanent faculty retire and are replaced with sessionals or adjuncts. And the effect of academic misconduct on transfer credit. Credit and transfer assumes that a student has mastery of the material, and if they have used some form of academic misconduct to present themselves as having acquired the knowledge, that may have impacts for them further on down in their academic career. Next slide, please, Mike. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the frequently asked questions that we get about articulation committees and their operations. So the first one we're going to look at is the clarification of roles. So each committee has a chair or a co-chair, and the expectation from BCCAT is that that person should be or must be a representative from a BC transfer system member institution, and preferably someone who has worked at that institution for 5 or more years. This is to ensure that, as much as possible, that the chair of the committee is someone who's familiar with the committee and with the programs in that general subject area, and has the knowledge of transfer and articulation to be able to lead the committee and to support its operations. The main thing that the chairs or the co-chairs do is first to chair the committee's meeting, which usually includes some role or being completely responsible for organizing the meeting. They're the main contact person for the institutional representatives on the committee, and they're also the contact that BCCAT has on the committee. So they play a very key role in being the center person, as it were, for the committee. Next slide, Mike. And so what we recommend to help with that role is having a co-chair or a vice chair is really helpful. Realistically, being an articulation committee chair is not a huge commitment. It's not a lot of work. The main activity is organizing and planning and running the annual meeting. But having 2 people involved is very helpful, particularly if something happens and the chair is not able to carry out their role. It's very helpful to have a designated person as a chair or as a co-chair or a vice chair who can step in if needed. When a chair has announced that they're going to step down, ensuring a replacement, older in terms of length of committee membership, representatives on the committee are often the most logical candidates, but some succession planning can be really helpful as well. If the chair changes or the co-chair, please let BCCAT know so that we know who to contact if we have a question or if we want to ask something about that committee. Also, please let BCCAT know as soon as the committee's meetings are scheduled, date, time, place, and that gets posted on the BCCAT website as well. So anyone who needs that information can find it. And when the meeting is completed, the sooner that BCCAT can receive the minutes, the happier we are. The minutes also get posted on the BCCAT website on each articulation committee's individual page. So they're there as a record of the meeting for perhaps for those who weren't able to attend or who want to know what was discussed about a particular issue. Okay, next slide, Mike. And I'll turn it back to Mike.
All right, yeah, and on that last note, Annabella Chun would very much is very appreciative when minutes are sent in a timely manner, because that saves her from having to chase after you, which is a key part of her job description, it seems like. So in addition to having the chair and co-chair, we also have another acronym to show you. It's the System Liaison Person, the SLP. And this person is usually an academic administrator, a dean, or it can be an associate dean out of the BC Transfer System institution. It doesn't always have to be from the exact same discipline as the committee, but the purpose of the SLP is to act as a liaison between BCCAT, between the dean's sector groups, as well as to provide that administrative lens to any particular discussions. Here at BCCAT, we attend regularly the dean's meetings. I quite enjoy attending the various dean's sector groups. that meet a couple times per year. And the SLPs really provide a key resource for the articulation committees to those groups. They are normally a non-voting member of the committee, and they are appointed by BCCAT in consultation with the committee. And we do have a few openings in some committees. So if you are interested in being an SLP and you regularly attend, or you're an associate dean or a dean, please let us know. And we'll let you know if there are any vacancies in your related field of academic. Now, this is something that we are some information that we'll provide that is a bit new this year, and it's around establishing new committees. So we have about 60 to 65 articulation committees across a variety of different disciplines and trades. And many of them were established many, many years ago, and they've just been ongoing, and we regularly attend. However, occasionally there is a need to establish a new committee, and this can be as a result of new or emerging disciplines where there isn't a clear fit for an existing committee, and there is a desire by the sector to build a new committee. Well, there is a process for building a new articulation committee. The process is laid out in the articulation companion. A lot of times a new committee might actually grow out of an existing committee rather than being completely new. So for example, there might be a committee that has grown to the size where it no longer meets all the specific requirements or needs of a particular area. We've had examples where we have anatomy and physiology that has come out of biology, and we have communications that I think at one time was part of the English committee. These are examples where it made more sense to create their own standalone committees. In order to establish a new committee, the process is pretty straightforward. Any applications for new committees are reviewed by BCCAT's standing committee called the Transfer and Articulation Committee, the TAC. The TAC meets 3 times per year, and any proposals that are put forward to the TAC will be considered. Within those proposals, we would ask that you include some information about the number of programs or subject areas, the anticipated student volume, as well as the student mobility patterns, because again, we always want student mobility to be the underlying foundation of any articulation activity. And it should also include some letters of support from the member institutions that are going to be part of this committee. The criteria for approval you can find in the Articulation Committee Guide. The guide, I believe, will be put into the chat. If not, I'll ask Annabella to throw the link into the chat if it's not there already. And then you can find out a little bit more. Now, one last thing I will make mention. Occasionally, articulation committees decide that they want to change their name because the name that they're currently operating under may no longer be applicable or current. That is a more straightforward process. If your committee decides to change its name, it's a simple vote within your committee that should be approved. And if your committee approves a name change, you would then communicate that to BCCAT, and we would update our records. This is not something that needs a review by the Transfer and Articulation Committee. Now, that's the process for establishing a committee. What about if we want to get rid of a committee? Well, thankfully, this does not happen very often. So I want to stress that this is an extremely rare situation, but there is a process for delisting an articulation committee. And there can be a number of reasons why we might delist a committee. It could be that the number of courses that transfer within that area or the program has evolved to the point where an articulation committee is no longer necessary or not really seen as productive. If the committee has not met in a number of years, or there's a lack of representation at the committee, that might be another reason why a committee might get delisted, or the committee might choose to merge with another committee. So just like you can have committees emerge from existing committees, you can also have existing committees merge together and become one. That might be a reason for delisting as well. So the process, again, is very similar to establishing a committee. BCCAT will work with the committee to determine if continuity is possible. If it is not, we will prepare a memo for the TAC to summarize the situation, and the TAC will make a decision on whether or not to delist. If a committee is delisted, BCCAT does notify BC Transfer System members, and there is an opportunity for the committee to be resurrected through the same process of establishing a new committee if they decide that they want to give it another go. Again, I want to stress this is very rare. I've been a BCCAT for 20 years, and I think this has happened only a very few, like a handful of times. So don't think that we're going to be looking out for committees and just try to delist them. That's not what happens. This is quite a process, but there is one. So I just wanted to highlight that for your attention. So that is the end of our formal presentation. And this is the part where we're now going to turn it over to you. And I can see that there's some questions in the chat. I would encourage you to put into the question and answer or chat, what are your transfer related issues? What are the issues that you're currently facing with your committee? What do you want BCCAT to know? Let us know. And I'm going to turn that over now. Fiona is going to be brought back up on screen, and I'm going to start going through some of the questions in the chat. So the first question is from Stephanie Boychuk, who I believe is upstairs in our viewing party from Vancouver Island University. Stephanie is one of the co-chairs of the ABE steering committee. She's asking, how do we access or request for orientations for new chairs? What do you think, Fiona?
The simplest way is to contact Annabella Chun, and we can the session takes about 45 minutes, and either Annabella or myself can do it, and we will schedule it for whenever is convenient for you.
Great. Now there's a question in here that I think that you already sort of answered, but who is the main contact person at BCCAT for chairs to connect with? And this is asked by Megan Feduk. Hopefully I answered that or pronounced your last name correctly.
And again, that would be Annabella, although Mike or myself or Annabella are happy to answer any questions in general.
Yeah, generally speaking, I mean, if you reach out to one of the three of us, we'll definitely get in contact with you because we're the ones that normally attend the most articulation activities. So this is a good question from Sean Ashe, and it's regarding minutes. And so he says that when they are approving meeting minutes, they are generally approved at the following meeting. So final minutes won't often come until a year after the previous meeting. The question is, how do other committees deal with this? And since the meeting minutes are public?
Most committees approve their minutes by email as soon after the committee meeting as is feasible. You can circulate the minutes by email and conduct a vote that way. BCCAT doesn't post the minutes until they're finalized and approved by the committee, but it's most committees have found that although there's some back and forth and the chair has to do a bit of coordinating with any changes or suggestions for revision that come in, it is possible to approve the minutes by email and then tell BCCAT to post them.
All right, so we've got somebody who's going directly through the Articulation Handbook. We have Emilio Porco, who asks, in the Articulation Handbook on page 23, since I know you have it memorized, changes that are not substantive and not requiring articulation include reasonable modifications. So the question is, what is a reasonable modification?
Well, generally a reasonable modification to an articulation agreement involves a change that's a substantive change to the course itself. So it might be a change in the textbook, it might be a change in the course coverage, the content that's delivered. It might be a change in something like the length of the course. A one semester course is divided into two separate one semester courses. So anything that substantively changes how the course is developed or the content that it covers or the way in which student performance is evaluated, those would generally be considered the substantive changes that would require re-articulation.
But it does raise the interesting question because one person's reasonable change might be another person's unreasonable change. And sometimes iterative change year to year might not require re-articulation, but cumulatively, iterative changes over 5, 6 years may mean that the course looks substantively different than it did when it was first articulated. So this is one of the pieces that makes articulation an art form in some ways. And so we do ask you to use your judgment. If you're unsure, you can always contact us. I would generally say that if it's been more than 5 years since the course has been reviewed, it might be in your best interest to re-articulate just to ensure for currency with your articulation agreements. But that's a very good question, Emilio. Appreciate that. Anna Marie Ney submitted a question asking about the student mobility data website, and thankfully Anna Dakina put that into the chat, so thanks for that. I gave a presentation a few weeks ago in San Diego where I was mentioning STP and CDW, and rather than put the URL up, I literally just said Google it, because that's an easier way to remember the URL. But if you are looking for the student mobility data websites, it's the URL has been populated into the chat. Okay, so there's a question here from Stephanie. Is BCCAT aware of credit courses being submitted to developmental working groups or vice versa? If so, is there info in the How to Articulate guide on how to handle it?
Mike, I'm going to let you answer that one because my honest answer is I don't know.
Yeah, so I am not aware of credit courses being submitted to developmental working groups, but that's not that doesn't mean that's not happening. We certainly monitor articulation activity, but I don't scrutinize to the degree of looking at course outlines myself. I certainly see volumes, but I see it more at a summary level. So I'm not aware of the situation or how it's being currently handled. If you're talking about non-credit work being submitted for credit or vice versa, that's generally handled on a case-by-case basis by institutions. If I've misunderstood your question, though, Stephanie, please feel free to find me, and I'm happy to chat further. So the question here is, what is the best contact if you are interested in becoming an SLP rather than sending everything to Mike? So I think the answer is Annabella Chun. Annabella is listening and probably screaming right now, but yeah, no, Annabella Chun is the best person to start, but you can always you can always reach out to me as well. Okay, we've got a question from Aisling Brady. The Biology Articulation Committee wrote a letter to the Ministry of Education relating to the lack of key skills in high school students. We haven't heard anything. Is this within BCCAT's role to support? Good question. Fiona, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Articulation committees obviously are one of the reasons they're put together to speak out around issues related to their discipline and how their discipline is taught and delivered. But I think I have to say I think this one is a bit outside BCCAT's remit because BCCAT is not part of the Ministry of Education. I do know that the ministry has curriculum content specialists that deal with particular areas, and one way to follow up on the letter might be to see if you can identify who the curriculum person is for your particular subject area. But other than that, it really isn't within BCCAT's range of scope of operations, I would say.
With that being said, though, we do have a number of committees that ask us in advance if we could try to help arrange a representative from the ministry, whether it's from the Ministry of Ed or the Ministry of Post-Secondary, to attend their articulation committees. And we do have the ability to liaise with the ministry. I can't guarantee that someone will show, but we can certainly try to act as a bridge to try to have some representation from the ministry there. They are receptive to requests. So if your committee is looking for some representation, please follow up with us and we'll do our best to try to make a connection for you. Just as a reminder, the people that are at the ministry, they're not, they are human beings. So it's always good to make sure that whenever they do come, that you facilitate a discussion that is productive and that is respectful, and acknowledges that not always the people that are going to be attending on behalf of the ministry are the ones that make the decisions. And so do keep that in mind. But if you do want to see more ministry representation at your committee meeting, the earlier you contact us, the better we can, and the more time we have to take that on. All right. Well, we are at 11:09. I'm looking through the chat. It looks like we have answered all the questions. There is one person who says, thank you, Sue Lee, who is saying thank you for the resources you put together, Fiona. So there's some kudos for you on the How to Articulate guide, as well as the Articulation Community Companion. I just want to thank everybody that joined us for this session. Really appreciate all the questions. Please keep it coming. We're going to take 5, and we will be back at 11:15 for our next session on upgrading programs, which will begin at 11:15. We'll see you then. A reminder, please leave the stream, come back into the next room, because that way we can start the questions over fresh. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.